You are listening to the Social Hotelier Show, a podcast that inspires hoteliers to create meaningful and memorable experiences for their customers in pursuit of their passion. We share our views and experiences relating to hospitality, technological trends, and also relating to humanity. Here is your host, Sam-Erik Ruttmann.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Social Hotelier podcast with me, Sam-Erik Ruttmann. Geordy Murphy is a visionary restaurateur, has left an indelible mark on the hospitality industry. Starting in San Francisco's vibrant dining scene, he created acclaimed concepts like Geordy's, which was named one of the 10 best restaurants in the US in 1994, and Long Life Noodle Company, 5 hottest concepts honoree in 1999. Driven by a passion for operational excellence, he developed FOBESoft, a revolutionary tool providing daily profit and loss insights for restaurant operators. Today, as the owner of Cypress Hospitality Group, Geordy blends innovative software solutions with his extensive expertise, continuing to shape the future of restaurant management. So welcome. It's an honor to have you on the show. Welcome to the show, Geordy.
Thank you, Sam. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's talk a little bit about your career. I mean, you have a long, distinguished career. You worked with some very well-known personalities in the industry. And so it has been diverse. I can see that looking at your biodata, spanning roles in country clubs, fine dining, and then technology. So what pivotal moments shaped your transition from hospitality management to developing your innovative software solutions for the industry?
Well, what happened was out of college, I had worked when I was in college for Club Corporations of America. So when I graduated, I got offered a job. I ran a country club for them in Dallas, Texas, called Canyon Creek Country Club. Migrated to San Francisco, where I worked with the Kimpton Group for a number of years. And then I opened Post Trio with Wolfgang Puck for 3 years. Went out on my own, mentioned the restaurants that you just mentioned. And when we had 6 Asian noodle restaurants called Long Life Noodle Company, I had gotten married, and we decided we wanted to raise our kids in Florida, where I grew up, a place called Ponte Vedra Beach. So I sold my shares back to our Taiwanese partners and moved to Florida. I started a company called Cypress Hospitality Group, where we're one of the premier headhunters in the country for restaurants mainly, chefs, managers, etc. And I had gotten so many phone calls from friends that were, can you do a budget for me? Can you look at my P&L for me? Can you help me with this or that? Friends that I had cultivated over the 18 years that I spent in San Francisco. And I had this idea of the way that I always operated, FOBESoft, food and beverage software, where being that the restaurant business is a rear view mirror business. You operate for a month and then you turn around and you say, did we make money last month? Well, to me, that wasn't good enough for me at the time. With 6 restaurants, you had to know what was going on every single day. So I came up with the idea of loading these programs on the computers at the restaurants, and then every night they'd fax me what the revenue was that day, front of house and back of the house labor, and what they spent. So fast forward, sold Long Life, moved back to Florida, and I was riding my bike, cycling one day, and I just came up with the idea for FOBESoft, and I found a programmer, and we just built it to see what would happen. And now we've got hundreds of restaurants on the platform. We're teaching people how to increase their profit. We say from 20 to 40%. If they work the program, it's going to happen. And that's where we are today.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, budgeting has been a little bit of a challenge for many restaurateurs. They are good in customer service. They're obviously excelling in the culinary side. What were sort of the key points that you picked up on immediately that you could share that the restaurateurs bought into, that they were want to work with you with the concept that you had?
Well, what we've done with the platform is we've broken it into 4 parts. We have your cost of goods, which everybody pretty much understands, and your labor, which a lot of people understand. And then we have what we refer to as your controllables and your non-controllables. The majority of restaurants out there, after your cost of goods, and hopefully they're calculating them correctly, and your labor, when you get into the controllable piece, a lot of restaurants just have a line item that says supplies. Well, that's like a dump all category. Everything that they come in, be it a restaurant supply, kitchen supply, china, glass, and silver, linen and laundry. The laundry list, we have 33 different line items between the two categories. Now that might seem like a lot, but the restaurant business is a business of pennies. So when you can look through that and budget each category on a monthly basis, you end up immediately saving money. And some people might think, well, that's, seems like it's a lot of work. But what we've done is we've built EDI connections to all the major broadliners. So when the invoice comes in, our program reads the invoice and parses it to the correct cell. So if you bought silverware, it's going to china, glass, and silver. If you bought chemicals for your dish machine, it's going to the chemicals line. So you don't have to sit there and systematically every day go through that. It's being done for you. And that's where I think that, the majority of the restaurants out there today probably haven't worked on or done a budget since they looked for investors or went to a bank, etc. So that kind of goes to the wayside. But if you don't have a baseline, how do you know how you're doing? That's what makes it a rear view mirror business. From your revenue, oh gosh, I didn't do this much last year this time, or I did more than I did last year at this time. But from your expense standpoint, and we all know that things have gotten more expensive, to operate with a budget, it gives us an opportunity to help the restaurateur increase their profit. Because what we refer to is we take little bites. And when we break out, we do the budget for them, with them. So when we look at it and we say, okay, if we can find a point in your cost of goods, which we typically can, and if we can find a point in your labor, which we can, because if you save an hour a day in the front of the house and an hour a day in the back of the house, you're going to save between $14,000 and $18,000 a year, which is significant. And then if you can find a point in your controllables, which is very easy, and a point in your non-controllables, that's 4 points. So if you have a restaurant making 10% profit, now they're making 14% profit. That's a 40% increase.
Yeah.
It's very impactful for restaurants.
Sure.
So that's where the budgeting piece comes in, to give them a baseline.
Okay. Now, you manage your restaurants yourself, and you work with some culinary icons like Wolfgang Puck. It must have brought you some unique insights. I mean, I never met him, but I read about him. I saw what kind of restaurants he had and the concepts he had. But I'm curious, from your point of view, what key leadership lessons did you learn that you apply now to your business as you do it and to the growth? I mean, was he somebody that you said, okay, he has some ideas I want to learn from and I want to develop them to my own?
Well, I would say a couple things. Number one is he's one of the nicest guys you've ever met. It's if you go back in our industry, for years we had these chefs that were throwing stuff and yelling and screaming and all that. That's not the case. Wolf is an even keel, doesn't get upset. He's just a great guy. And the other thing with Wolfgang is quality. I mean, every single thing that you bring into the restaurant is typically of the highest quality that you can get. Because, if he says that, if you start with a high quality item, it's hard to mess it up. And you don't get too complicated. And his service. How many people have been in restaurants? In fact, I was in one a month or so ago that my wife and I tried to order this appetizer, and the service said, well, that appetizer is only served at the bar. Well, what's that? Whereas, Wolfgang would serve you, if you want to sit in the bar and eat the whole menu, then have at it. If you want to, change this on the menu because, on this dish, because it doesn't necessarily agree with you, then that's fine. I mean, he's in the hospitality business, and he's just one of the coolest guys that you've ever met. Did
he have some particular insight, understanding what the customer is looking for that made him successful, or was it just that he had you're looking at the personality and the product itself that sold itself? How do you see it?
I think his product sold itself, and I think that his innovative, like when he started with the pizzas way back when, at the first Spago on Sunset. But I think that one of the things was that, he attributes his success, and you'd have to, of course, ask him, but from my understanding, is when he was at Ma Maison and the Pritikin diet was the big thing.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the Hollywood people would come in and say, I want this dish, but I got to eat it like this, this, and this. And he would make it for them.
Yeah.
I mean, he would do it. Whereas today, or, over the years, if you are in a restaurant and you're telling, there's restaurants still today that say, we're not going to alter the dish for you. And not to be, there are a lot of people out there that we all know that have these eating restrictions. But you're in the hospitality business, and that's what you chose to be in. So I think that's what, that's being hospitable.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, sure. When you went into your own business and so on and developed your company, what was some most unexpected challenges that you faced while you built your brand or product, and how did it reshape your vision? Because there is always something new that comes up, unexpected, and is there something you like to share for the audience that they can bring back for their as a kind of a learning?
Well, one of the things that I just decided that I was going to build FOBESoft because my feeling is, and still to this day, that every restaurant needs it. They need some. You need to know where you stand on a daily basis. You spend so much time in doing, from service to the culinary piece of it, to making sure that everything's right. But the financials, two things. Jose Andres recently was asked, what's the most important thing that you can tell a restaurateur? And he said, understand the financials. And another chef, his name's Evan Funke, who was just on Netflix. He's on Netflix today on Top Chef or World Chef, the new show that's on Netflix. They asked him, his first restaurant, they spent $3.5 million and they closed. And they asked him, well, what happened? And he said, I didn't understand the financials. So that piece itself is, my feeling, the most important piece. Of course, if you're a chef, you want the food correct and you want your service right or whatever, but it's a business.
Yeah.
And that's the important piece that I think people need to understand.
Sure.
I can't get back. What was the question? The initial question you asked?
No. I think you actually answered the question basically. That what are the sort of leading things that you have to pay attention to, and I think you answered the question very well. But I would be interested also to know what is one of the leadership lessons you learned the hard way in your career and you having your own business, and how does it guide your decisions today?
Well, I think it's, I was in a situation years ago in a restaurant where I had an issue with a top level employee, and I just kept letting it linger and linger and linger and linger. And I think the thing to do is, what I've learned from that is, make a decision and move on. It can be the right decision or the wrong decision. You can always change it. But to let things just keep lingering and lingering when it's bothersome or whatever it is, it's to make decisions. And whether you've made the right one, I used to tell managers that if something arises, try to think of 3 things that you could do, as opposed to just make a decision. Should I do this? Should I do that? Or should I do this? And you can do that in a matter of minutes, especially if you're on the floor in a busy restaurant. And that is going to give you an opportunity to make a better decision, but make a decision and move on. And if it's not the right decision, okay, we can go back and look at it. But you can't keep things compounding. Otherwise, you're going to have all these things that you haven't decided on, and it's going to become a mess. So that's one of the major things that I think.
Yeah. Has there been a time when you made what we call it a controversial decision in your career? And then how did you handle that criticism or doubt? Because I'm sure that if somebody doesn't agree with what you did, and so on, they may have some issues and so on. Has there been a time in your career where you think that, did I make the right decision? Okay, it was controversial, but I made it. And then you had to deal with sort of the feedback.
Yeah, I think that goes back to what I was just talking about. It's making the decision.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's right and sometimes it's wrong. I got rid of a chef one time that maybe I shouldn't have. but
Yeah.
you want to make sure that everybody's on board and the boat's going in the same direction. The reason that situation happened is because everybody was going this way and this one person wanted to go that way continuously. So it ended up being a good decision, but it took a minute for it to happen. And that's goes back to you got to make a decision and move on.
Sure. Now, during the years, I mean, you have been around for a long time in the industry. How have you seen the hospitality or restaurant industry transformed in the last decade? And what pivotal role do you think the technology has played in this evolution?
I think technology's probably played a pretty big role, especially for one thing that like we're doing, but just the whole tech industry, the social media piece. When you walk in a restaurant, beacons can tell from your phone that you're in the restaurant. They can have offerings, etc. But like what we do now at FOBESoft, we constantly try to stay ahead of the curve. We've gotten it to the point now where you don't really have to enter any information. We import from the point of sale system, food, beer, wine, liquor, front of house, back of the house. Labor, because we've already built the salaries behind with the payroll taxes, etc. We have EDI connections with all the major broadliners, like I mentioned, and then we have you can upload an invoice, just take a picture, boom, goes to the cloud, parses to the cell. And now what we do is once a week, for those that want it, we email them a snapshot of where they stand. So we know, at once a week, the restaurateur is getting here's my dashboard. And they don't even have to do anything to get it. So I think that's helping transform from a technological standpoint. And then just the exposure piece that everybody's getting through social media these days.
Yeah. Now, we went through the time of the pandemic and so on. How did it affect you? And was there an opportunity to pivot with FOBESoft during that time? And maybe lasting changes did it bring to your business model?
Well, what happened with the pandemic is I had financed this myself up to that point, and it was getting more difficult. And then the pandemic hit and we lost every customer. So I found a small angel fund out of Orlando, Florida that helped us. And that's what's put us in the position today to grow and be where we are. So the pandemic was a hit, but it also brought up some great partners that we have today.
Yeah, that's great. Now, the future of technology in hospitality with the advancement in automation and data analytics, how do you envision the future of hospitality management evolving? And what role do you see the kind of softwares and the service you provide playing in that transformation?
Well, I think it's only going to get better. But the other thing is that there are some platforms out there that are just giving you too much information. It's a business. You need to have, your own analytics and what's going to make you successful. But there are certain things that, when you get tech people or maybe accounting people involved in the hospitality business that don't necessarily understand the pieces of the hospitality business, that can kind of basically give you too much information.
Yeah.
I think what we've done, and there's a couple other platforms out there, kind of similar to ours that help. But I think that I think technology is going to help more in maybe getting butts in the seats and exposure and continual exposure like that versus, the analytical type thing that we do. Because how many ways can you analyze a dish? It cost, your plate costs this much to make it. This is how much we should charge. So you don't want to get too overburdened with your tech stack and have too much information.
Yeah, that makes sense. Good. Now, where do you see the future in terms of your business evolving? Where do you go from here? Is this the model as it is the model you're going to stick with, or are you looking already any other ways that you're going to advance in and help the restaurant owners in their business?
Well, we're constantly upgrading and working on our platform. I've been asked a few times, well, could you do this for, a different industry or whatever? And of course, it's applicable, could be applicable to a bunch of different industries. But just in the United States, there's 800,000 restaurants. That's a massive market. Yeah. So, and we learn from each one of our clients, people look at things a different way, and we've made certain changes. So we're constantly enhancing, the platform. Like we used to just have, a food cost line, and now we break it out to, beef, poultry, fish, grocery, dairy, produce. So someone can see if their cost of goods, if their food cost is running high, they can pinpoint more accurately where the issue is. So it's that type of thing. But here again, it's not giving them, too much information. Yeah, they're not going to pay attention to.
Yeah. Okay, maybe we'll step out of the costings and the budgeting and so on, and providing data and so on. But from your personal point of view, and you have seen the industry evolving, what are the things that you're happy about, and where you see it's going next in sort of the future of the restaurant business? And what are the things that you say, oh, that's too bad that this has already disappeared in our business?
Well, one thing it's kind of a two-edged sword, because I basically went to business school, but trained somewhat classically, as a chef and French, basics or whatever. I love the idea of, all the new types of cuisine that are popping up today. But I think in that it's taken away some of the, and I don't want to necessarily say the fine dining, because not to that extreme, but the more casual fine dining, I would say. Your basic French bistros. There's not as many of those as there used to be. I don't want to be a get off my lawn guy, but because I love some of the new cuisines and things that the innovative things that are happening. But I think that and I think that the younger generation today, that's why, because they're coming up with different ideas. They've come from different backgrounds. They're bringing different things to the industry, which is great. It's really, really neat to see. I haven't in a while, but seen a new spice or something of that nature that you're like, wow, where's that from? How's that used? Which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah. I like something about now what has been developed. The people have the chefs who have the chance to travel around the world and have picked up ideas, and they're kind of creating not the confusion, but a fusion of tastes. And I think that's quite interesting these days. And or even just taking a traditional cuisine and present it in a very unique way, taking maybe an extreme sample of having Italian pastas served with a Japanese presentation or something like that, just to get do something differently, because I think there's always a market who are in search for new ideas and looking for ways of doing things. Just curious, so have you seen, because you're surrounded by a lot of restaurants and you go to a lot of them, anything in particular that has kind of you have noticed that was an interesting idea so lately?
Yeah, well, I live in North Florida, so it's not like it's San Francisco or New York or whatever.
Right.
We're not lucky enough to have that many. But when we travel, like in DC, I've seen some cool stuff. We went to a really neat, ramen spot there, and then there's another restaurant there that's one of my favorites called Le Diplomat. It's a classic French bistro type situation. But yeah, there's a lot of new innovative stuff happening, which is interesting.
Yeah, sure. So, well, thanks, Geordy. Has been a very interesting discussion, and thanks for sharing about your insights. People are interested to find out more about FOBESoft. How can they find you, and what are the best ways to reach out to you?
It's our website is FOBESoft.com, FOBESoft.com, and my email is geo@FOBESoft.com, and that's the best way. Either shoot me an email. I'm happy to set up a demo. It takes 20-25 minutes to see it, or discuss anything from a restaurant standpoint with restaurateurs, where we can help.
Okay, excellent, Geordy. I will put these in the show notes, so people who are either listening to the podcast, they will have it in the show notes, or in the, when it was a YouTube episode, that will also be in the description. So they will find you. So that's been great. So thanks very much again. And for all the listeners, if this is your first time joining the Social Hotelier podcast, I really appreciate you taking the time, and take a moment to leave a review. Give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. So we have a lot of guests coming your way who either are in the tourism or hospitality industry. So stay tuned for the most thought-provoking conversations. So until next time, take care and keep exploring.